You have a wonderful date. The conversation flows, effortless and alive. You share a laugh that feels real, a moment of understanding that feels like a quiet homecoming. For a brief, shimmering moment, you feel seen. A spark of true connection is lit. And then, the next day, you wake up to a profound and unnerving silence in your own heart. Your first impulse is not to send a text, not to nurture the fragile flame of this new beginning. Your first impulse is to retreat, to pull back, to create a space of safety around yourself, even though what you are protecting yourself from is the very thing you thought you wanted. If this strange push and pull is a familiar dance in your life, you have likely wrestled with a lonely and confusing paradox. Why do I crave deep intimacy but pull away the moment someone gets too close? It can feel like a form of self-sabotage, a cruel trick your own heart is playing on you. You might label yourself as cold, as commitment phobic, as someone who is simply not built for closeness. But what if this impulse to retreat is not a sign that you are incapable of love? What if it is a sign of how deeply you desire it and how terrified you are of losing it? This is not about a flaw in your character. It is a deeply human pattern, a quiet conflict between the need to be seen and the fear of being truly known. Let's gently name this dynamic. It is the fear of intimacy. And it is important to understand that this is rarely a fear of being with people. You may be social, charming, and have many friends. It is not a fear of connection, but of a certain depth of connection. It is the fear of what happens when someone moves past the carefully presented version of you, the witty, capable, easygoing ambassador you send out into the world, and begins to glimpse the person behind the performance. It is the fear of letting them see your true, imperfect, and vulnerable self. The closer someone gets, the more they see, and the more they see, the greater the risk. The paradox is that your soul craves to be fully known, while your nervous system screams that to be fully known is to be in mortal danger. This fear does not arise from nothing. It is a ghost, born from the evidence of our past. Our minds are like a vast and intricate library. In every relationship, every interaction is a book on its shelves. Past hurts, moments of rejection, betrayal, or times when our vulnerability was met with criticism are not forgotten. They are logged as crucial data, forming a powerful, often unconscious, belief system. Over time, these experiences can write a core rule for our survival, a rule etched into the very wiring of our nervous system. To be truly known is to be heard. If they see all of me, they will eventually leave. This is not a dramatic, conscious thought. It is a quiet, bodily certainty. This is why a new, healthy connection can feel so threatening. It directly challenges this fundamental rule, and our system, in its effort to protect us, pulls the emergency brake. We can see this as a misguided attempt at protection. The part of you that pushes people away is not the cold, unfeeling part. It is, paradoxically, the most vulnerable and tender part of you. It is the guardian of your deepest longing for connection, a guardian who has learned from past experience that closeness is a precursor to pain. This guardian is acting on old information. It is running an outdated software program designed to keep you safe in a past environment that may no longer exist. So when someone gets too close, this guardian rises up not to sabotage your happiness, but to protect you from what it perceives as an imminent threat. The strategy is painful, but the intention is one of profound, if misguided, self-preservation. Understanding this allows us to bring compassion to the pattern instead of shame. You are not pushing love away because you are broken. You are pushing it away because a part of you is trying so desperately to keep your heart safe. It is a common myth that someone with a fear of intimacy avoids relationships altogether. Often, the opposite is true. The pattern is most visible not in the absence of connection, but in the moments after a real connection begins to form. You might be the person who loves the thrill of the chase, the intoxicating energy of the first few dates. In these early stages, you are in control. You are performing a version of yourself, and it feels safe. The dynamic shifts when the relationship begins to ask for more, when it asks not for your performance, but for your presence. It is the moment your partner turns to you with a genuine desire to understand your inner world, to see behind the curtain. That is the moment the alarm bells start to ring. The feeling of being truly seen starts to feel like being exposed, and the impulse to create distance becomes overwhelming. This pattern reveals itself in 1,000 small acts of retreat. It is the unanswered text after a wonderful evening. It is the sudden need to be busy for a few weeks after a period of intense connection. It is the act of picking a fight over something small, an unconscious way to create a predictable distance. It is the emotional shutdown in the middle of a vulnerable conversation, a quiet withdrawal into the safety of your own mind. Each of these is a tactic your misguided guardian uses to restore a sense of safety, to push the other person back to a distance where they can be managed, where they cannot get close enough to see the parts of you that you believe are unacceptable. So how do we begin to soothe this fearful guardian? How do we start to write a new story, to gather new evidence that intimacy can be safe? The journey does not begin by forcing yourself into a vulnerability that feels terrifying. It begins with a quiet act of curiosity, by turning inward. One gentle practice is to sit with a journal and compassionately explore this question. What am I afraid they will see if they get too close? Allow yourself to write freely, without judgment. Are you afraid they will see your insecurity, your sadness, your messy, imperfect humanity? Are you afraid they will find you boring, or needy, or not enough? The goal is not to judge these fears, but to simply meet them, to bring them out of the shadows and into the light of your own awareness. By naming what you are so afraid of showing, you begin to separate your true self from the fears that have become attached to it. You are simply meeting this frightened part of you with curiosity, not with the same shame that caused it to hide in the first place. From this place of self-awareness, we can attempt a small, safe experiment in the outer world. This is not about baring your soul to a stranger. It is about a microdose of authenticity with a person you already have some measure of trust in. We can call it the practice of safe vulnerability. The next time you are with a trusted friend or partner, consider sharing one minor, low-stakes imperfection, preference, or feeling. It could be as simple as saying, "I'm feeling a little anxious today," instead of the automatic, "I'm fine." It could be admitting, "I'm actually terrible at keeping plants alive," instead of pretending to be competent at everything. The point of this experiment is not the content of what you share. It is to observe what happens next. In most cases, the world will not end. The person will not run away in horror. More often than not, they will meet your small act of vulnerability with their own, and the connection will deepen. Each time you do this, you are gathering new data for your inner library. You are providing your nervous system with new evidence that contradicts the old rule. You are teaching that misguided guardian, one small, safe moment at a time, that to be known does not always mean to be hurt. The journey to embracing intimacy is a quiet one. It is not a battle to be won against your fear, but a slow, patient process of earning its trust. It is about understanding that the paradox of wanting to be seen and fearing to be known are two sides of the same beautiful human coin. The deep, universal need for a connection that feels both authentic and safe. Your impulse to pull away is not a flaw. It is a map, pointing directly to the parts of you that most need your own compassion. By learning to hold that fear with kindness, by taking small, courageous risks in the direction of authenticity, you begin to change the narrative. You begin to discover that vulnerability is not a weakness to be hidden, but the only true doorway to the deep, resonant intimacy that you have been searching for all along. What if the parts of you that you are most afraid to show are the very parts that will allow you to be truly loved?